Hello, and thank you for watching this information evening. The aim of this presentation is to reassure you that we are doing all we can to ensure that our students get the grades that they deserve this summer. We have carefully examined all of the guidance and are confident that the system that we will implement will have safety nets throughout to provide students with the opportunity to provide us with evidence which we will use to generate their grades. This evidence may be work or assessments that they do in the coming weeks, or it may be work or assessments that they completed during their Year 10 or their Year 11. After Easter, students will sit some additional assessments in classrooms on content that they've already been taught and will have revised for. We are calling these additional assessments assessment opportunities because they are just that. An opportunity for students to provide us with even more evidence of how amazing they are. Now, everything I'm about to describe is correct as of now. We're still waiting for some information from the exam boards, and if this changes our plans, we will be certain to communicate that with you as quickly as possible. Now, there are three main items in the outcome of the consultation that I found encouraging and heartening. The first one being the grades students get should reflect the standard at which a student is working, assessed only on the content that their teachers have taught, so there won't be any surprises in these assessments. The second one is, we are being asked to consider the grades for this year's cohort compared to our cohorts from previous years when exams have taken place. Now, this puts our students at a great advantage. As I'm sure you're aware, we have a proud record of high academic outcomes for our previous Year 11 students. And the third thing is that we are being asked to make a holistic judgment of each student's performance on a range of evidence. So, those who have performed well over Year 10 and Year 11 have a number of safety nets now, and those who feel that they could have done better have another opportunity to show us just that. I believe that these three things mean that Year 11 can be reassured and comforted that if they do as we ask, if they follow all the instructions and the guidance of their teachers, they will be rewarded with the grades that they deserve in the summer. Now, Mr. Warburton will go through the detail, but the overview of our plans is as follows. So, students will have two assessment opportunities to generate some more evidence after the Easter break. There will be safety net of using previous assessments already completed, which may form part of this range of evidence. Each assessment opportunity will only last around an hour, and there will be at least two assessment opportunities per subject. Now, the questions will vary in difficulty in the assessment opportunities, but the questions and the papers that they sit will be accessible. We may use some of the exam board materials once we've seen them and evaluated them, and each assessment opportunity will be preceded by teaching and by revision in lessons to prepare the students for these assessments. For the majority of students, these assessments will take place in classrooms, as I said, and we are developing a thorough and robust internal quality assurance process. Now, for subjects with NEAs, non-examined assessments, students will be provided with one assessment opportunity and will carry on with those NEAs. For the BTECs and for the OCR Nationals, they're slightly different in that students will continue to work through the units. And for students taking GCSE Art and GCSE Photography, they will continue to be assessed in all their lessons in the coming weeks. I'll be back at the end of this presentation to add to the reassurance that Mr. Warburton's message will provide. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. My name's Richard Warburton, Vice Principal with responsibility for the quality of education at the County High School Lethwich. In this presentation, I will outline our plan for how teacher assessed grades will be awarded, which this year replaces GCSE exams, and I'll explain the processes that support this being done accurately and fairly. There are four main areas that we've been asked to put in place to ensure that you have confidence in the accuracy and fairness of grades that we will award. We ask that you trust our track record in achieving success and believe that you can be reassured that the grades we award will match previous performances as required by Ofqual and the DFE. This is an opportunity for all students to succeed. We've tried to plan the assessments to keep the whole process as stress-free for students and staff as possible. So, teachers will assess students on what has been taught. There'll be no new content. Teachers will consider evidence from throughout the course. And as a priority area, we will look at 2 assessments which will begin after Easter to generate current evidence of grades that students are achieving. Each assessment opportunity will be preceded by teaching and revision so that students are thoroughly prepared for those assessments. And sitting behind all of it, there is a safety net of us using assessments which we've already completed, for example, Student Tracking 1. And we'll publish this assessment calendar and the sources of evidence that we'll use to award grades with students and with parents and carers. We intend for the whole process to be calm and ideally not daunting, and to have that reassurance for you that we have a safety net in place. So, the assessment calendar, I'll just take you through in parts, will showing you there 2 assessment windows. So up until March we'll be teaching, and then straight after Easter the first assessment, and then before the half term the second assessment, spread over 2 weeks. And just to give a little bit more detail, that's so that we can outline those assessments in each subject and timetable it so that we consider student well-being. As you can see on there are approximately 5 in a week, and on the first week there are 6, but it does depend, not all of the option subjects will be setting an assessment at this point. So for example, art and photography will be developing their portfolio over the full 10 weeks, and I'll look at that in a little more detail on the next slide. A little bit more detail is that each assessment will be around an hour long, and it might be shorter, it won't be longer. We'll design those assessments so that they're accessible to all students. In those subjects which are tiered in science, maths and French and Spanish, there will be either a 9 to 4 exam or a 1 to 5 assessment. And we'll use either some of the exam board materials that are going to be newly produced or past papers, so that we're confident about that matching to national standards and expectations. As I mentioned earlier, those subjects with NEAs, they'll be included as part of the assessment opportunity. And art and photography, BTEC's OCR Nationals, they'll continue working through the unit as planned, and we'll draw together the evidence on the basis of that when awarding a grade. In addition, in English language and modern foreign languages, there will be a separate grade submitted for speaking, and again there won't be additional work. The teachers will make that judgment on what they know of your children. So for the majority of students, assessments will take place in the classroom under supervised test-like conditions to hopefully make that process as straightforward and undaunting as possible. There is less content. Students will know what that content is, so there is less to revise, and that will be covered in lessons. There'll be no surprises. So we feel it's an opportunity for all. There is content there that will allow students to access all the grades, and no matter where a student's been up to, whether they've done really well so far, they've got that as a backup, and if they've not worked so well so far, this is an opportunity to provide us with evidence to award the best grade we can. And effectively we're going to teach, test, and then we're going to forget that piece and move on to the next part in the course. We will support any students who need additional time during the assessment windows, making sure that this is fair and that nobody misses out. And I've also asked the subject teams to consider how marking will avoid unconscious bias. So staff won't necessarily be marking just their class, they'll mark a mixture to make sure that the specialisms and the experiences are shared and that we carefully view that it's done fairly. And that leads us on to the internal quality assurance to make sure that the grades we award are accurate and fair. So, as I've outlined, there are 2 assessments per subject which the teams will work on and prepare, and then they are adjusting their planning and teaching so that all students have a consistent and fair approach, whatever class, and it's going to be based broadly on all the exam board materials, matched to those national standards, and crucially for us, in line with expected progress based on our previous performance. We have some outstanding results and we would expect that to continue this year. Staff will standardise before marking, so they will review the exam paper, they'll review the mark schemes, they'll make sure they're confident applying that fairly. We will then, once the marking has been completed, moderate and check across the whole cohort that marking is accurate and fair. Now, other evidence will be used where appropriate, and in particular we're mindful regard to considering the impact of any absences. So should somebody have to isolate over any part of this 10-week period, that will be borne in mind so there is no disadvantage to any student. An additional layer of checks are that the senior leadership team will sign off the exams, the quality assurance procedures and the data at each of those assessment points. Subjects will need to store their assessment evidence in exam folders in subject areas, which is available for inspection so that we've got the evidence at all points. Subject time to moderate and standardise to get this right should make sure that we award the most accurate and fair grades that we can. So just to look at what that might look like, so this is something that I've shared with the staff, that at each of those points we've got subject meetings planned and we've rearranged some of the calendar to make sure that there is opportunity to do this carefully, that in and around those assessments there is opportunity to meet and carefully review this process. Now, sitting side by side with this is the external quality assurance the exam boards do, and they will ask for evidence of our quality assurance to ensure we've been thorough and we've been fair. And on here they might sample a centre at subject level to check that we've got the quality assurance, to check that we've got the evidence for the grades that we're going to award, and that will be randomly generated. An additional check that they have is based on risk, so if grades were out of line with previous data. So we will not trigger that. We have some outstanding results and we have very good evidence already, so we will be in line and achieving as we'd expect, which is above the national average. They'd look for a change in the pattern of entry, so if we entered different students from different year groups or suddenly changed tiers of entry, but again we've spoken and decided on those patterns and we're confident that won't be a factor. And if you're a new centre, again, which isn't us. In addition, Mr Snelson as head of centre needs to submit a declaration to confirm that all of the grades are accurate, that we've done this quality assurance, that students have completed the amount of content to move on to post-16 education pathways. And one of the things that we are confident about is that broadly we finished the curriculum, we have taught the main parts, and we're going to specialise in certain areas that we think students will be able to be successful in. They'll ask and we will sign off to access arrangements have been met, that all needs are considered, and again working with Miss Ashford to make sure that's the case. And they'll also, as part of our checks, ensure that there's no bias and discrimination, and we've minimised that. And again, if I think about in particular the moderation and the standardisation and the way that we'll mix the marking up to ensure that is fairly done. Okay, the third part is results day, and that has been moved to Thursday the 12th of August, so it's been brought earlier. And that in particular is an opportunity so that people might consider appeals. And we very much look forward to seeing it. It was a special occasion last year which took place outdoors, and we look forward to celebrating with you in August. Should a student wish to make an appeal, we'll register that on the day. And we hope this doesn't happen because of the careful and thorough process that I've outlined here, and that we think the results, and we hope everybody will be happy with those results when they're awarded. But looking at that appeals procedure, on here you can see that students have the right to appeal. That comes with the warning that grades can go down as well as up, and that exam boards would only make changes if they found that the grade that we had awarded was not reasonable and was based on a clear mismatch between the evidence and the grade. And we're going to be very careful to make sure that absolutely isn't the case. If students believe that the grade doesn't reflect the standard of their performance, they can appeal to the centre, that's us, for administrative or procedural errors in case we have inputted data inaccurately, at which point it would be changed. However, they can also ask, if they're still unhappy with that, for us to appeal to the exam board, and we would submit our evidence on which the judgment was made, and the exam board would look at that and would decide if we'd made an accurate judgment based on that. So, in summary, we have set assessments and evidence. There were 2 assessments with a safety net of previous data that we will look at to make sure that students are awarded the fairest and most accurate grade. We'll ensure this through the quality assurance, through careful and rigorous standardisation and moderation, and at each stage that will be signed off by the senior leadership team. Results day is the Thursday the 12th of August, so please make a note in your diaries for that. And a reminder that appeals can be made if there is felt to be an error in data, or if that a student feels that's not an accurate representation. And that evidence will be kept in school and will be accessible for us to share with the exam board. The other part on there is a date for you, which is Wednesday the 31st of March, where we're going to have a parents' consultation evening online. We want the very best for your children, and our experienced staff will guide them through this process and support them in achieving results which will support their next steps post-16. And we believe very much it's an opportunity for all students to do well. The parents' evening is an opportunity for you to meet your child's teachers and to ask any questions you have about the process and to check on their progress at this point. So finally, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. All our staff will work their hardest to support your children and our students in achieving the best grades possible, and we look forward to their success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warburton. Now, these assessment opportunities will be low stakes. They are in classrooms. Students will be prepared for these assessments. There will be less for students to revise. For example, there'll be a 5-page booklet in science rather than a 30 to 40-page booklet like in normal GCSEs. In English literature, for example, students usually need to revise all of the characters and all of the themes, where students will be told which character they'll be assessed on and which theme. So to Year 11. For those of you who have not performed as well as you would have liked in Year 10 and Year 11, you now have the opportunity to show us what you know in these 2 assessment opportunities and achieve the grade that you deserve. And for those students who have achieved excellence during your Year 10 and Year 11, you have built in more safety nets to ensure that if something goes wrong in these assessments, we can use the other excellent evidence to help build a picture that will go towards that grade that you certainly deserve. Now, if you have any questions, can you please email in admin@leftwichhigh.com and we'll pull together a frequently asked questions sheet and we'll share that with all parents. You are at the best school to get the best results. Listen carefully and work with your talented teachers and use these assessment opportunities to show us what you know. Try not to get anxious about them. They are not exams and they are not all or nothing. They are an additional opportunity to generate some more evidence to show us once more how amazing you are. Thank you.